They called us weak, until we carried their dying across the stars. Long before our ships first crossed the void, the Varlax Empire considered humanity nothing more than a curious, fragile experiment. To them, we were primitive mammals too obsessed with emotion and art, too reckless in our passions, and too short-lived to matter. Their historians called us flicker race, as though our entire existence was nothing more than a candle sputtering in the dark. They visited our system once, centuries ago, and decided we weren't worth conquering. Our atmosphere was too unstable, our genetics too chaotic, our minds too open to the irrational. When they returned generations later, they did not come to wage war or trade. They came because they were dying. The Varlax had mastered genetic stasis, reshaping their bodies into flawless crystalline forms immune to decay, disease, even the slow march of entropy. They thought themselves immortal. But they discovered too late that their genetic stasis also locked away their ability to adapt. When a starborn plague slipped through the Empire's core worlds, it spread like a shadow through glass. Their perfect bodies could not mount even the smallest immune response. Worlds once bright with shimmering towers became silent crypts. Fleets of iridescent ships drifted in orbit, piloted by the last few caretakers who still functioned. In desperation, they called out to the galaxy, broadcasting in all known tongues. They begged for help from the warrior hegemonies, from the cold logic of the row machine intelligences, from the ocean worlds of the Karash. But none answered. Only humans came. We came in worn freighters, old colony barges, hospital ships hastily stripped of civilian luxuries, and filled instead with rows upon rows of bunks, medical bays, and simple stasis pods cobbled together from mining cryochambers. When the first human convoy broke through the blockade of derelict Varlax warships, the Varlax leaders still scoffed at us. They saw us as foolish primitives playing at heroism. Our doctors and volunteers wore battered exosuits that looked like toys compared to the sleek Varlax bioarmor. Our ships reeked of antifungal scrub and welding smoke. But we kept coming. We ignored their insults, their refusal to even look at us as equals. Instead, we stepped into their plague-ridden arcologies, breathing the air thick with glittering viral dust, and we began lifting the fallen. We carried them on our backs, some so crystalline and heavy they cut into our flesh. We watched our medics cough blood inside their helmets, yet they kept moving, one shimmering Varlax after another. We built triage camps on orbiting moons and on barren asteroids. We turned entire cargo bays into floating infirmaries. We gave them our own blood where we could, synthesized plasma where we could not. We held their fragile hands as they shattered into slivers in our arms, whispering apologies through tears. In the beginning, they tried to forbid us from touching their sacred forms, but they had no strength left to enforce it. Soon, Varlax children, who had never before seen a human in person, began whispering to our nurses in the dark, asking why we sang to them as we worked. We answered with soft lullabies, old earth songs from rain-soaked fields and crowded cities. Our engineers turned greenhouse ships into airborne hospices, cultivating warmth and oxygenated pockets for the Varlax to rest. As weeks turned into months, our mortality became our power. We were not unchanging. We were not invulnerable. We bent, we broke, we adapted. We wept for every medic lost to the virus, every volunteer who collapsed after carrying one too many bodies. We did not stop. When we ran out of vaccines, we turned to old Earth antibiotics and viral phage cocktails. When those failed, we experimented again, risking our own lives to test new treatments before offering them to the Varlax. Our songs rose through the silent crystal halls, echoing off walls that had never known such warmth. At first, the Varlax called us foolish. Then they called us stubborn. And then, finally, they called us saviors. On the day we carried the last living Varlax youth aboard a repurposed or hauler, a girl no bigger than a human child, her crystalline skin already fracturing, she looked up at our captain and asked, "Why do you help us? You owe us nothing. You are fragile. You will die." Our captain knelt, tears and blood streaking his cheek, and smiled. "Because we can. Because we must. Because we know what it means to lose everything and still keep going." The transmission of that moment spread across what was left of the Varlax worlds. Their great elders, now hollow statues waiting to crack, finally understood. They had believed strength meant perfection. We showed them strength meant carrying each other, even when it hurts, even when there is no hope of survival. We did not save all of them. We lost many of our own. Some ships became funeral pyres drifting beyond known space, carrying our dead and theirs together. But the survivors, Varlax and human alike, began anew on colony worlds, places too raw and imperfect for their old empire, yet now made sacred by shared sacrifice. In the end, they called us weak no longer. In the end, they named us kin, and we built new cities side by side. Among those cities echo songs and human voices and crystalline chords, telling the story of how the fragile carried the dying across the stars and taught an empire that true strength is not in unbreakable bodies, but in unbreakable hearts.